Shri Prabhat Kumar Mishra, IAS Principal Secretary, Environment, Government of West Bengal. His Excellency Mr. Andaleb Elias, Deputy High Commissioner Bangladesh in Kolkata. His Excellency Didier Telpain, Consul General of France in Kolkata. Camille Severac, Deputy Country Director, AFD India, our partner. Distinguished panelists, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. Let me welcome you to this wonderful session, which is slated to be wonderful, as I reckon at this point in time, given the galaxy of speakers that we have throughout the day. The workshop on Mangrove Symphony, blending blue carbon, climate resilience, and sustainable finance in the Indo-Pacific. Now, this workshop is in the framework of the broader collaboration of the Observer Research Foundation and the AFD. This collaboration is in relation to the Sustainable Development Financing in the Indo-Pacific Development Network. We are trying to create a development network of Sustainable Development Financing in the Indo-Pacific. And that has been the broader modes of collaboration. We already had two discussions, two workshops, rather two roundtable discussions so far. And this is the first workshop. And that too, in fact, the chosen theme happens to be on mangroves. Now, there is no doubt that this is apt and appropriate to have this workshop in Kolkata, given the fact that we are close to the mangroves. Now, why mangroves and what is so important about mangroves? Now, what makes mangroves unique is A, the unique ecosystem livelihoods linkage. This is from the perspective of an ecological economist who has been looking at the ecosystem services of many of these ecosystems, of these natural ecosystems, which are natural endowments, also provide for natural infrastructure, and at the same time provides for goods and services free of cost to the human community. Now, this very notion of ecosystem services emerged way back, but probably found a more succinct statement, in fact, in the 2005 publication known as the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. Because the MEA, or the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, though in fact there have been studies prior to that, the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment essentially classified the ecosystem services into four categories. These are the provisioning services of the ecosystem, the regulating services of the ecosystem, the cultural services of the ecosystem, and the supporting services of the ecosystem. And the mangroves provide all four to us. Now, apart from the critical provisioning services of the ecosystem that the mangrove provides us, which offers the most unique statement on the ecosystem livelihood linkage, the other important issue which one often has to highlight is in the context of climate change and carbon sequestration, capacity of mangroves. Now, if you look at this entire theme, or if you look at the concept note that has been placed in front of us, it covers a gamut of issues. Right from the ecosystem livelihoods linkage, ecosystem services, understanding mangroves, how human interventions have essentially impeded on the ecosystem structure, functions, and eventually services provided to the human community. But at the same time, how do we essentially revive, conserve, or save these mangroves from the various threats that occur? Now, when we talk about climate change, let's understand one thing, that climate change is not actually an environmental problem. Climate change is a developmental problem. It emerges from the forces of development, emerges from the human ambition of unbridled economic growth, impeding on the working of the natural ecosystem. Thereby, in fact, in the process, we lose out on a host of ecosystem services, and that affects the long-term developmental parameters, whether it's concerned with economic growth, whether it's concerned with human capital, whether it's concerned with natural capital, or whether it's concerned with even some of the critical social capital.
Recording in progress.
Now comes the issue of policy and governance, as also the financing. Now, the fact remains that mangroves, from the perspective of climate, offers both types of services, whether it's in the form of adaptation or whether it's from the natural mitigation. Now, when we look at finance as a whole, and we look at the entire portfolio, climate financing portfolio, what we find is that there is of course, an interest when it comes to the mitigation projects, but the adaptation funds are awfully short. At the same time, there is lack of innovative products as far as climate is concerned, because in most cases, the kind of products that we have are plain vanilla products. At the same time, there hasn't been much of intervention, especially in the developing world, especially in the BRICS, when it comes to the private sector participation is concerned. Because in many cases, the MFIs are simply looking at the return on investment, ROIs, and putting their money in most of these mitigation projects, precisely because you can see perceptible returns when you put in money in renewable energy or in electric vehicles. But where is the market when it comes to adaptation? So that is where essentially we have to create a market even for an ecosystem like mangroves, which is catering to both the needs of whether it's in the form of climate change, whether it's in the form of adaptation. But let me also create another case, the case of loss and damage financing. Now, when loss and damage happens for mangrove ecosystems, it is not merely in the form of an annual loss or an annual damage, precisely because there's a permanent loss or permanent damage that's we are talking of when we talk of loss and damage. So it is essentially a loss in opportunity or loss in ecosystem services, maybe for the next 20 years or for the next 30 years. So one has to follow the principle of net present value, and eventually the evaluation mechanism has to occur in that fashion. So that is what, in fact, I intended to summarize as far as this workshop is concerned. These are some of the critical questions that we intend to address here. And with that, let me welcome you all. It was only pertinent to provide this perspective. So with that, let me first invite my colleague, in fact, at AFD, Deputy Country Director, Camille Severac, for her initial comments. Over to you, Camille.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh, for setting up the topic of the discussion today so well. And thank you for your introduction. I'm Camille Severac. I'm the Deputy Country Director of AFD, Agence Française de Développement, here in India. I will not deep dive into the topic as much, but maybe just give a bit of context about the SUFIP development network and why we are here today. And so the AFD is a development bank fully owned by the French government, and our mandate is to implement the French government policy in terms of development cooperation for economic development, and we provide financing and technical support to government, to public projects, and also the private sector through a subsidiary. We are present in 115 countries around the world, and we have a strong presence in the Indo-Pacific region. Apart from financing sustainable development projects, we also aim more globally at supporting the existence of a stronger place for development agenda in the Indo-Pacific dialogue. And we all recognize the importance of an inclusive economic growth or protection of the environment in the region. And for a few years now, we have tried to support not only investment projects, but also wider initiatives, which will contribute to this goal. As you were reminding, in 2022, we organized with the Indian Exim Bank and also the ORF an event, which is called Sustainable Finance in the Indo-Pacific. It was a summit, the SUFIP, and it gathered 500 participants from 27 countries. During this summit, public and private finance institutions could discuss common issues. They could also express their commitment to financing more SDGs. So through this experience, we were confident that exchanges between partners from the Indo-Pacific region are indeed useful, and because many commonalities exist. And then ORF and AFD earlier this year partnered to create and to launch during the Resina dialogue the SUFIP development network. The objective is to promote peer-to-peer exchanges, to public common research papers, and organize platforms for discussions between experts and researchers of the Indo-Pacific region. The overarching goal of this network is to place sustainable development at the forefront of the strategies in the region. And today's roundtable is really an excellent example of these activities of the SUFIP development network. And we hope that these collective discussions will allow to learn from each other through different perspectives and experience. We are really pleased to see that there are participants in the roundtable, in the panels and online, which include India, of course, but also Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Australia, Seychelles, or France. And this is really a great representation of the diversity of the region. Maybe we can, by these discussions, enrich the policy-making decisions of the stakeholders of this region. So I really look forward to these discussions, and I really thank you for your engagement.
Thank you so much, Camille, for that introduction and introduction to the SUFIP Development Network. May I now request His Excellency Consul General of France in Kolkata, Mr. Didier Telpin, for his special address.
Sure. I will start with a personal souvenir. You know, it was some 1 year ago, something. Probably my first journey to Sundarbans. I've made 4 or 5 of them. I was on a course, you know, with somebody from the very place. He was in his 40s. The detail is important, and he was showing me the sea. You know, I know about the raising of the level, etc., etc. Twice the world average, too. But he told me, you know, look, when I was a boy, the house of my parents was there, around 400 meters away. Now it's under the water. Then, when I was around 20, 25, our second house was there, about 100, 150 meters from the coast, under the water. And now, currently, I'm living here on the coast, but till when? In this context, you know, I'm very glad to start this one-day workshop, with you all. We must underline the relevance of having these discussions today in Kolkata, as we are directly affected by the many challenges of the Sundarban forest, which, as many of you may know, it's the world's largest mangrove forest. In this regard, I extend a warm salute to my colleague, Andalib Elias, Deputy High Commissioner, Bangladesh, and to Mr. Prat Mishra, the Principal Secretary, West Bengal. This event is as well an illustration of the Indo-French Partnership for the Planet, which is a paramount pillar of our so-called Horizon 2047 bilateral roadmap. It also follows, as you know, President Macron's visit in Bangladesh, and of course, before he was here for the G20 in Delhi, after which France committed to enhance its commitments in climate change adaptation alongside the Bangladeshi authorities. It's, of course, as well in line with the current discussion between AFD and the authorities of West Bengal. Today's discussion represents, in this sense, the collaborative spirit between our countries, aim at preserving mangroves and biodiversity together, but maybe more importantly, they include examples from other countries spanning the Indo-Pacific region who share similar challenges in their territories. Almost all Indo-Pacific countries have adopted the so-called Kunming-Montreal Agreement in COP15 last year. So these discussions are key to solidify our understanding of the objectives to protect 30% of lands and seas and restore 30% of degraded ecosystems. We must learn from each other and evolve from strict conservation methods to a broader approach, incorporating sustainable use of natural resources and delivering cultural, ecological, and scientific benefits to society. Somebody, and this is going to be my conclusion, once said, there is no love. Love is nothing, only a word. What counts are evidences of love. I do love Sundarbans. I was there, as I told you, with West Bengal authorities and or with friends, activists on this sector from Indian NGOs. I have a special thought for Mr. Yayanta Basu. Most of them probably, of you probably know, some 4, 5, 6 times. And in 2 days, this weekend, I will travel again there. I will spend the weekend in Sundarbans in order to introduce our new ambassador to India, His Excellency Thierry Matou, who arrived some few months ago, to somehow to introduce him to this unique region, I mean unique in the world.
Thank you so much, Excellency, for those initial remarks. I don't have doubt that you're in love with the Sundarbans, given your frequency of travel out there. So with that, in fact, we come to His Excellency, Mr. Andalib Ilyas, for your initial comments.
Thank you so much. Your Excellency, Sri Prabhat Kumar Mr. IAS, Dr. Nilanjan Ghosh, Ms. Camille Survey, and of course my very good friend and colleague Didier, Mr. Didier Talma, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I would of course like to start by expressing my thanks to the Consulate General of France in Kolkata, the ORF, and of course the AFD for inviting me to this workshop and for giving me the opportunity to speak a few words. It's very important to have this discussion on this topic at this moment, particularly with the entire world geared up for the COP28 in Abu Dhabi. As it has already been mentioned, that the largest forest concentration of Bangladesh is the Sundarbans, and which is predominantly a mangrove forest. This forest has been the lifeline of the entire southern part of starting from providing livelihood to the communities living on the fringes of this great forest, to protecting the southern Bangladesh from cyclones. You know, we are a natural disaster prone country, and this mangrove forest of Sundarban plays a very crucial role in protecting our lives and our economies. So it has truly been the protector and the provider at the same time. However, of course, with the unprecedented pace of climate change because of these man-made causes, the mangrove forests are being threatened globally, with Bangladesh being no exception. We find that because of sea level rise and increased salinity in the surface as well as groundwater, the Shunduri trees, that's very important, the Shunduri trees, after which basically the name of Sundarban was coined, is rapidly dying out. And I also visited Sundarban recently, where I found this very unfortunate view there. I mean, this barren patches of land in the Sundarban, which was never there before. I visited both sides of Sundarban in Bangladesh and India, and it's really unfortunate. Shunduri is a very important tree for us economically as well, because it's used as a major wood providing country in the southern region. And with fast eradication of this tree, both the forest and the people depending on the forest are becoming vulnerable. Another example I would like to give is the Golpata tree, you know, the Nipa palm. These two trees are very important for our communities living in the Sundarban area. This mangrove palm is again very important for the housing, for the thatching of the roof in that area. I mean, in Khulna, Satkira, Joshua, it's very common to have these Golpata houses. Golpata trees are dying out very fast. So with this rising of salinity, we have, so this is directly impacting the economy. This is directly impacting the livelihood of these people. So they are losing the professions they have been involved in for generations, and now they are migrating to other areas. So we have this climate migration because of this mangrove eradication. So that's one point that we have to also take into account, right? Now, interestingly, both Shunduri and Golpata, these are salinity tolerant trees, that we have to remember. But even then, they are dying. Why is that? Because of the increment in the salinity because of this sea level rise. And if you look at that, yesterday we were having a very informal discussion at the residence of Didier. There, one of the guests mentioned about the impact on the tigers. So the link between these shunduri trees and tigers and the salinity. Shunduri trees, they attracted monkeys. Chain comes the deer, chain comes the tiger. So there is this very intricate connection with these mangrove trees. Salinity is increasing. Because of this increasing in salinity, the trees are dying out. Tigers are being forced to, like, including other animals, they are being forced to drink more of saline water, which they tried to avoid before. They have access to fresh water, but that's very limited. And that fresh water is also becoming saline because of intrusion of salinity in the groundwater as well. Now, last time I visited Sundarban, the people there, they were telling me that tigers are becoming more aggressive compared to before. There may be many reasons, but one of the theories is that tigers are drinking saline water more than before, shooting up their blood pressure, making them more cranky. That's very interesting. I mean, this is so intricate a thing. It has not been proved yet, but there is this theory going on in that area that increasing in salinity is creating all these troubles, including the shunduri trees and tigers and attacks on human being by the tigers. Now, of course, a very key issue here is this importance of carbon sequestration by the mangrove. That definitely that has to be calculated as well, because Dr. Ghosh always brings in these economic calculations, which I really love. Also have to be calculated this carbon sink that we are losing there. Now, against this background, it's becoming very urgent every day to address this crisis. Now, in Bangladesh at government level, at the direct instruction of our Honorable Prime Minister, we have started massive mangrove forestation programs. However, the challenge is to keep the plants alive. That's becoming a great challenge for us. The saplings, it's a very hard thing for us to keep those saplings alive now. As IPCC has mentioned in all its recent reports, the number of cyclones hitting Bangladesh is going to go up. It's not going to go down. So we'll face more cyclones in the coming days. And again, we will really depend on this mangrove forest to play a critical role as the green belt protecting the communities. Now, we all agree that climate change is one crisis that no single country can address alone. We are not a polluter. Bangladesh is not a polluter at all. We release less than 0.4% of global carbon emission. I think it's now around 0.35 or something like that. But still, we are suffering, and of course, Sundarban is suffering. To ensure that this mangrove forestation program is successful, it's important to have bilateral, regional, and international cooperation. And here, AFD comes into picture. Sundarban is, of course, a common heritage of India and Bangladesh, and we have appropriate agreements. I'm sure Mr. Sir will know about that. We have appropriate agreements and MOUs that are in place to address this challenge at government level. But internationally, it's critical to ensure sustainable finance, which is very important, for continuation of the initiatives to protect the mangroves. You all are aware of the international climate finance situation. We in Bangladesh have always been very vocal about this issue of climate finance. And we have set up our National Climate Fund being an LDC more than a decade ago. In Abu Dhabi and beyond, we will of course continue to call for fulfilling of the international commitments regarding climate finance. In Bangladesh, we have, because climate change is a big issue for us as the climate vulnerable country. So we have embarked upon a journey. We call it from climate vulnerability to climate resilience, and from climate resilience to climate prosperity. That's the journey that we are trying to undertake. Now, considering this critical relationship between climate change and the mangroves, I'm of the view, definitely, that through these kind of workshops and discussions, it's possible to take this agenda of saving the mangrove ahead globally. Unfortunately, I have to apologize here that I will not be able to attend the thematic panels that will take place today because of some preset official engagements. My apologies for that. But I really do hope, Dr. Ghosh, that the summary of the meeting will be shared with us so that we can share that with our government policymakers. And I would love to continue this discussion and hopeful to find, as we say, a win-win-win situation. That is, win for the forests, win for the communities that depend on the forest, and overall win for the planet. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You essentially floated a host of new hypotheses as well, and including the tigers. So whether there has been an increase in the incidence of human-wildlife conflict, of course, Dr. Dondo, if there's some data is there, I think that is a hypothesis that we can definitely go on testing. With that, let me come to Mr. Prabhat Kumar Mishra, the Principal Secretary, Government of West Bengal. Sir, over to you. Floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. I'm really thankful to the organizers for having invited me in this discussion. It's a real pleasure. I am working on Sundarbans for almost 2-3 years now, and I thought I was going through the agenda. It really is very comprehensive. I have a small presentation, Ghosh, if because I found that. So I would try to put a bit of perspective and context in the discussion, because I feel that if we are talking of financing, then if we are very clear about the context, then maybe the financing can be channelized to the right elements. So that's how it is formatted. Some of the issues that I have touched upon is well known, but even for the sake of completion, I have just jotted it down there. So basically, this is dynamic kind of a geomorphology, because it is threatened by coastal erosion and sea level rise. So it's not a fixed kind of a landscape that we are handling. It keeps changing, and then there are these numbers about the area, etc., etc. Of course, these numbers keep changing. The Ganges and the tributaries, and that is the big problem, that Sundarban is really at the receiving end, because the channels have shifted, and then the freshwater inflow in Sundarban has gone down, leading to the higher salinity. So it negatively impacts biodiversity, and that is again a well-known thing which is there. Then the sea level rise, sea surface temperature, how it is much more than the global average, and how the sediment supply has gone down. Actually, that is another very big problem. So this was this Dampier-Hodges line that you can see. And what I like about this line is that it actually covered the entire, almost the tip of the tidal rivers. So tidal rivers play a very major role in Sundarban ecosystem. And then if you see these tidal rivers, and we are facing tremendous problem with tidal rivers, especially, let's say, Matla, a mighty river, which used to go into a wetland. That wetland is now threatened, and because of that, the water is unable to really flow into that wetland and offload its sediments and silt. So this silt, the Matla is now forced to go into another river called, I think, Hogol. That is the river's name, and causing a lot of erosion. This is a very big problem, and my Matla itself is silting heavily. It is rising, in effect, the amplitude of the tidal rivers, leading to more erosion. And more erosion means more problem for the mangroves, because as you can see, this siltation, I will not dwell much upon it. This is the same thing which I just explained. And this is the erosion scenario, a lot of islands going away and erosion, and this is the kind of the satellite map imagery and analysis. If you see, on Indian side, we have done the calculations, and we have seen that there is something which we call net silt, zero net silt situation in Sundarbans, which essentially is implying that whatever is erosion is happening, it is getting deposited somewhere else in Sundarban itself, with no net silt arriving at Sundarban from freshwater from the north. Now that situation is very alarming, because that means that the sedimentation and the development of this delta itself is threatened. And this, I think, same thing happening across the border also. Now let's look at one of the islands and how the erosion is happening. I'm bringing this erosion issue very much because mangrove is threatened, as you can see. Now this mangrove actually there is a very good foreshore, very little erosion and a healthy growth of mangrove. But if you look at this next slide, the whole, there's again mangrove, but then the land is getting sliced out. It is near Atapur by river Darsa. I had gone there, and it's really threatening the mangrove ecosystem. So this erosion is a very big issue in Sundarbans. And then the next thing is salinity, which was just Naipa. This is the problem because this cannot survive in salinity more than 15 ppt, and we are now having salinity which is exceeding 15 ppt, and that is what it is. Then of course the problem that mangroves are facing because of the repeated cyclones, which has gone up, almost 27% rise in frequency and intensity of cyclones in the last 120 years. And we mapped these islands, some 39 islands, where we have received some breaches and some problems in the last 3 cyclones. So this is the most vulnerable part, and I won't be surprised if the mangroves in these areas are affected and impacted. Then this anthropogenic pressure, this Kripa Hati, this is Canning 1 block actually. There was a good mangrove, as you can see, and see where it has gone in 2021 and how it has been converted into aquaculture. So economics is really pushing it in directions which we do not like, but then this is what, when we are talking of financing, we have to create instruments to incentivize it in a direction which is good for mangroves. So that is something very important. Just look at this intertidal thing. So you see this is the embankment actually. So this is embankment, and this intertidal play and this mangrove generation 2012, and now if you see all these aquaculture things are coming up, creating problems. So we have to look at livelihood also, and create stakes with mangroves of the local community. We'll be discussing in the afternoon about community's role. In such a way, it has to be weaved in such a way that they protect mangroves. So it's like that. So therefore, if you see this paper I got, it's a really interesting paper. It was assessing the mangrove extent, genus composition, other health indicators, and it has taken a very long 20 years, this thing. Overall, a decline in mangrove area and health, that is what it concludes. And there is a change towards more tolerant genus accompanied by reduction in the prevalence of freshwater loving, which we all just discussed. So now coming back to salinity, and in our system, in policy domain, we are trying to resolve it by expanding the freshwater inflow, and that is being done in 2 ways actually. One is from Hooghly. So you can see these are the offtake points. So this is Yamuna actually. So Yamuna is disconnected with Hooghly. So we are trying to connect so that it can the water goes down and flows down into Sundarbans through Ikshamati system. And then of course we will be discussing with His Excellency from Bangladesh, because the Padma is, we are having 2 offtakes, one of Jalangi and another one of Mathapanga. So that also is disconnected. That also we are planning to somehow connect it in some way, so that at least during monsoon we can get some fresh water inflow into Sundarbans, which will reduce salinity. So this is how, because if we just try to plant these mangrove saplings, then it may not work, because if salinity is not fixed, then it will die. So that is why the overall ecosystem has to be, or what I should say, the habitat for the mangroves, this has to be restored in some sense. Only then we will be able to really achieve what we are trying to achieve. And in that thing, then reducing salinity through rainwater harvesting, This has been done. Almost we have now exceeded 600 kilometers of creek excavation in Sundarbans. And that is helping us a lot in creating livelihood opportunities as well as reducing salinity and also the saline water ingress. So this is these are some of the things that is being done. Another World Bank project was there. Actually this some permeable structures we are putting so that the water comes in and then it gets trapped here and silt we get so that we have the mangroves. So this is, I will quickly go ahead. So healthy growth of mangroves, you can see the dwarf embankment we cannot see, but these are the hidden somewhere there. So there is silt formation and that is how. So this is the another embankment, and then integrated mangrove cum shrimp farming, already proven by the news. That is an NGO working, and that will perhaps reduce the anthropogenic pressure. And these services have already been discussed, so not dwelling upon it. Some estimate, it shows total value estimated rupees 1 million per hectare per year. If you plant mangrove, then it goes to that extent. So now this participatory approach, again, a lot of things here to do. We may discuss it more in maybe panel 4, where we will discuss how community participation can be facilitated. So that is there. Again, value chain creation seems to be working in Sundarbans, which we have tried in terms of nursery creation and then creating stakes and so on and so forth. So that is there. Again, a little bit of a problem with this, but okay. So I will not look at economics. Again, I'm leaving it for panel 4. What I would try to say is that the local community has been recipient of the ecological services of mangroves. But then that doesn't seem to suffice. Actually, the carbon credit instruments which are now in place and which are likely to come in a big way, we do hope and we do target that these farmers and villagers, the instruments are issued in their name. I mean, there are many companies which are coming with corporate social responsibilities, but the carbon credit instruments are issued in their favor. That is not going to really help. So government has to be there, and if the mangrove is created by government funds, then it might make sense. With community participation, then it might make sense to issue the carbon credit instruments in favor of the farmers and villagers. That is a very big change that we have to bring in, because that has not happened. At least I have not heard anywhere that it has really happened. So that is there, and this is the conclusion, that the mangroves are threatened by salinity, the storms and the pressure, and we have to weave our financing around these elements. Then we also have to restore the ecosystem by basin-based river restoration approach, also wetland management, and water harvesting structure, ensuring expanded freshwater availability, and engineering solutions has to work in tandem with the plantation, because otherwise, if the silt is not trapped and if the permeable structures are not in place, then it will not regenerate. And some ideas on how to fix the anthropogenic pressure by integrated mangrove cum aquaculture, etc. And of course, community participation is there, carbon credit is there, and right economic incentives have to be in place. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity for sharing my thoughts on restoring mangrove in Sundarbans. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra, for that illuminating presentation. And definitely now that puts things in perspective. And I distinctly recall when we were talking about the sediment trapping, especially in the upstream. And one of the structures for this that is responsible for the sediment trapping happens to be the Farakka barrage. So without really hiding that fact, let's just put that on surface. And around 8 years back, Professor Jayanto Bandyopadhyay put this across, that is a static structure for a dynamic delta. And he is here today. In 2009 paper written by him and me, we talked about this. And to a large extent, this entire delta is fed by the sediments not brought by the mainstream Ganges, but by the Koshi. Given the fact that a host of sediment trapping is being done by the structures on the Ganges itself. So anyway, with that, we come to the end of this particular session, this inaugural session. We have food for thought for the entire day to discuss right now, whether it is with financing or with the biodiversity or with including human-wildlife conflict issues that you have raised. So do we have a break or we continue with the next session? I think we continue with the next session, given the fact that we are half an hour late. We started late, of course. So maybe, in fact, the nameplates can be changed and we continue with the next session in that case. Thank you so much to all the panelists for this wonderful inaugural session, and we are set for the day.